I remember an incident from about more than 10 years ago when we had just recently moved to London. And we had a get together of my husband's classmates from his engineering college. And there were about five boys who were together and they decided to meet and with all their wives. And we were all fairly newly married and the wives had never met each other. So, uh, we met up for lunch at one of the boys' places, and the boys were all holed up in a room recapping their college days, and we girls or ladies were trying to get to know one another and we were just talking. And at one point, the conversation turned to talking about mother in laws. Very fascinating discussion. And and then we were all, complaining and narrating funny incidences about our experiences with mother in laws. And uh, all of us, then there was this one lady who didn't hadn't yet spoken, and after all of us were done and giggling and also making fun of mother-in-laws in general and all of that, and then she sort of just spoke up and she said, I have a wonderful relationship with my mother-in-law, and I just love her, and my relationship with her is even better than it is with my own mother. And she said that, and the rest of us were like, I mean, I was like, ooh, ooh, wow, okay. And I looked around, and everyone else looked equally stumped, and there was silence. She was silent, we were all silent, and then the hostess ran into the kitchen to check on the food. Somebody else went to the bathroom. Somebody went to check on what the guys were doing. I went to check out the balcony, and the group split up. And then we reconvened later and started on a completely different topic, and the party continued. But but this incident left a very deep impact on me. I never actually got to know that lady again. We met a couple of times, but that's about it. And then we moved out of London. But it's left a deep impact in my head. I still remember this incident. It was a very powerful incident. And the reason I quote it here today is to address the question of how desperate are we and how much is our need sometimes to belong to groups. So, what had happened in this particular incident? There was a certain group norm that had been set up, and a certain group energy that had been formed, and maybe not a very constructive energy, but it was humorous, and we were all, everyone had good things and bad things to say about their mother in law. Life is a mixed bag. We always have good things and bad things, but this was sort of the norm, was that we are all going to complain and narrate the funny incidents where we are sort of making fun of mother-in-laws, and that was what was happening. And then this came out of nowhere, and we all felt like we had been sort of slapped in our face or whatever. And yet, what was she doing? She was just speaking her authentic truth, and I don't suspect that that was her reality. And she had a lovely relationship, which was even better than her own mother, and she just wanted to express that. So, so the question that we have today, which I'd like to invite all of us to ponder on, is how how desperate are we to belong to groups? Indeed, we all want to belong to groups, and there are very strong evolutionary reasons for this. Back in the caveman's time, if we didn't belong to a group, we would die all alone, because we roamed the world in groups, and we hunted in groups, and we cooked in groups, and we ate in groups, and so we're hardwired to need to belong, because being cast out of the group, or being isolated, or being the one that nobody wants to include in their group means you are dead. And maybe that's sort of true even now. I remember when I went to hostel, my sister, who had been to hostel a year earlier, gave me this one very strong advice. She was, make sure you become a part of a group, because I was going into a hostel where I didn't know anyone, and I was changing cities and all of that. So she was like, make sure you become part of a group, and then you're going to be fine. And, and so I did. As soon as I went, I was like, I want to become part of a group. But, you know, really, is life only about survival? Isn't there more to life? And aren't there other things we want to do? And there are aren't there values we want to uphold, dreams we want to pursue? And sure, there is a trade-off involved. And this is actually a bit like a follow-up to the questions that people sent in after my last video on how willing are you to be disliked. There were all these questions of belonging and groups and comments that came in. And sure, when you the lady in that young woman in London who set herself up to be disliked by all of us, although in the long run my respect for her has only grown and grown, but in the short run she was like, we were like, who are you? Like, what are you, like, no, don't do this. You're making us feel so horrible about ourselves, because we've just been like, venting and complaining about our mother-in-laws, and like, she just made us feel so bad, and so we don't like her. So um, in the short run, she set herself up to be disliked, and that is a price that we would probably have to pay when you destabilize group norms, or you question group norms, or you decide to do something that pretty much threatens your belonging in a group. But then there is a benefit. I mean, you wouldn't do it if there's a benefit. The benefit could be just wanting your authentic voice to be heard. The benefit could be wanting to be yourself. The benefit might be wanting to experiment, doing something that you want to do, doing something that feels right to you, pursuing your dreams, your own aspirations. And uh, again and again and again, in so many areas and contexts, this keeps showing up. Just some of the contexts where you might not have suspected that this shows up, uh, but if you dig deeper, you might find it true, because well, I found it in some strange context, which is like, sometimes creating illnesses just because you want to belong to your, you know family, sometimes creating problems in your own life. So maybe, you're like, maybe you don't have problems with your maid and helper and cook, but everyone around you and is talking about that, and they all have problems, and you want to belong to that community of people who is talking about that problem, and so you create that problem for yourself, because otherwise you don't get inclusion into that group. So what are the things that you might be creating in your life, which you probably didn't need to create just because you wanted inclusion into a certain group? Judgments, for example, I found this a lot. uh, so in social science, it's very well known that the best way to have cohesion in a group is to sort of have a kind of in-group, out-group feeling. So, like, if you want to you want to have a greater sense of belonging about feeling Indian. Let's complain about the non-Indians, the Britishers, the Pakistanis, the Americans, the Chinese. So let's, like, hold them as something separate and talk about them, and um, you know uh, judge them, so that we feel more cohesive about ourselves as Indians or whatever group. Okay, so I am Bangalore, so let's judge the other institutes, and so on and so forth. So how many times may you not have actually wanted to judge others and other groups, the out group, so to say, but because you want to really belong to the in group, you make that, you indulge in that, and you make that, and once you do that, that's part of your behavior, that's part of your karma, and that's a part of who you are, and it becomes who you are. So how many compromises are you willing to make to your own sense of being in order to belong to a group? And by no means am I saying chuck all the groups and become a loner, walk into the desert and make no compromises. But I'm just inviting you to question, because do a very rational cost benefit analysis every time. I mean, do I really want to create a problem in my life so that I can belong to this group of people who are talking about problems? Do I want to create an illness? Do I want to judge others? What is the price? What are the costs that I'm willing to pay for the benefits, and what are those benefits? uh, and while we're at the cost benefit thing, don't forget that there are benefits associated with breaking the norms also. And very often, some of these benefits are not in the short run, but in the long run. So, going back to the London example of that girl, that lady who was like, I love my mother in law, I have a great relationship. In the short run, we were like, all, ooh, alien, who are you? We don't want to know you. But in the long run, my respect for her grew, and she actually birthed so much awareness in me. Again, in my same experiences, I found, when I've chosen to actually upset a group norm to follow my dreams and go ahead with it, A, there's a short term benefit also that I get to follow my dreams. B, in the long run, those who are really friends and, or those who really care about me, or even people who weren't friends, many of them have sort of turned around and say, oh, no, you know what, we actually respect you more for taking that stance and more for being yourself. And can you teach us how to do the same? So the benefits might come in the long run, which you can't see now. You have no idea. So you might just start becoming change makers in the group, right? You might just start inspiring others. So that's it for today. Leave you with a question. How desperate are you to belong? Clearly, we all do need to belong. We want to belong, but how desperate are we to belong? Which are these groups? How many groups do we need? How much reassurance do we need that we need to belong to groups? And what are the prices that we're paying for them? And how willing are we to pay those prices? Which ones of them might we be willing to question? And by doing so, can we actually start becoming the change makers in our own lives as well as that in others? If you enjoyed this video and if you would like to leave a comment, please do so below. I love hearing back from you, and you can subscribe to this channel to see further videos. Have a great day.